So, what do you say about jumping into the next call?
Yes, let's take it.
Let's do this. So, I want to bring this caller on. This is Jamie. Pronouns are he, him from Texas. Sounds like you want to talk about how to approach refuting Islam. We have somebody here who is very good with this topic. So, what is your specific question?
So yeah, as a English expat, we had a lot of we still have a lot of problems back in the UK with Islamophobia, and this question could also be expanded to like criticizing Israel and that without becoming like anti-Semitic. So when a religion is so intrinsically tied to culture and law as it is in a lot of Islamic nations, and then that culture sort of somewhat gets transported, how do we refute the stuff that is either irrational, the God belief and all that kind of stuff, as we would with Christians, and also decry things like the mistreatment of women and the human rights abuses, but not fall into racism and because I've seen far too many people like, oh, you're bloody coming over here making the Sharia law, get out my bloody country and all that kind of stuff. And I hate that. I really don't want to become that person. But I also don't want people to run roughshod because people are afraid of offending them.
Yeah,
That's
Adam, go for it.
a loaded question. To be honest, if you want to avoid offending a particular religion, you better argue the core values, the underlying. So when you argue against the evidence for, are there any evidence for the existence of God? When you argue for or against that, you're not talking about any specific religion. It shakes the foundation of any religion that is built on the fact that there is a God and that God sent a book, and this book says we need to do X, Y, Z. So I don't think if you argue from that stand, I don't think anyone can take it as you're offending my religion. So that's one way to go about it. If you're talking about the religio-political philosophies like Judaism or Islam, uh, there's hardly any way to do it without being specific about these two religions. And I think the most important part is, okay, now you're making your religion a law for other people, even for those who do not believe in your religion. We need to first establish that your book is from God. Otherwise, you're giving me a text. You're saying this is the Constitution that came from God. But well, you need to establish first. You need to prove to me that it came from God before you can push it as a law and as a political system on others. In this case, you have to argue against the book, and in that case, you definitely have to offend some.
Mm. I mean, I suppose keeping it as objective as possible, like these are human rights abuses. It is known, equality between people is a good thing. Homophobia and transphobia are bad things. So try and, pardon the phrasing, trying to keep the criticisms religion agnostic, as in they could apply to any religion, as much as possible. And if I do need to get into the very specific nitty-gritty of things like Sharia law or that kind of thing, first of all, read up on it. And second of all, maybe just try and make sure I'm attacking the idea, not the person or the people. Like, I don't believe you're a bad person because you're a Muslim. I just think the ideas that your religion is putting on you are bad and that you're a good person. And in fact, actually, one of the best things I've heard from you guys is, I believe you're more moral than the moral code you follow. I believe you're better than your God.
Yeah, it's definitely an approach you can take. Something that I like to do, especially if there's a topic that I don't know as much about, or especially trying to be culturally sensitive, because it's I find it weird sometimes when some uh, Americans or Europeans who come from a Christian background and don't really understand the culture that they're engaging with. There's some sticky arguments people get into because they essentially can straw man the other person's perspective. Because on the one hand, you are arguing against a religion, but you're also kind of arguing against some culture that you don't understand. And it's important to differentiate, um am I getting this correct about the religion, or is there something that I don't understand culturally that is significant about this particular point in their religion? So that's a case where I might not take such an aggressive approach with somebody if I don't really understand the cultural context, and I might take more of like a straight epistemology approach, and turn
Mm.
more of the questions on them, because that way I think there's not a lot of harm in asking them questions. And there are definitely some ways that you can phrase a question to be culturally sensitive and talk more objectively about, like you were saying, the actions specifically involved. Um, so I think maybe taking more of that gentle approach and approach it from a perspective of, I want to understand you. I want to understand where you come from and what is holding you to this belief, versus just attacking the belief outright, because they might see it as you are attacking my culture and my family, my friends, the way that I grew up, which might be a barrier to them critically thinking about it. Those ties might be preventing them from getting over that bias. So I don't know if Adam has some other thoughts on that.
No, I really, really appreciate what you said, and I totally agree with you. And understanding the culture is very, very important, because there was a time in history where wearing the burqa, the complete veil of the face, not the hijab, but the burqa, um, in Judea, for instance, it was worn by prostitutes to conceal their identity, and we're talking way before Jesus' time, so in ancient Judea. Now, in Islam, they at some point they took it as a sign of liberation and protection of women. Um, then further down in history, it became a sign of oppression. So even what I'm trying to say is, even the same symbol, wearing a head cover, geographically from one place to another, can mean completely opposite things. And even in the same geography throughout time, it can mean one thing and later it means something different. So it is very important to understand the culture that they're coming from. And perhaps it's good to ask the person, or the people that you're talking with, to understand their perspective, and then argue from there if you find it um, harmful or not doing good.
Mm.
Does that
Not
clarify
sure that
things?
helps.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned epistemology. I'm trying to practice that in my time. I'm actually pestering people on VR chat every so often and asking them, what do they believe, why do they believe it, just a sort of little sparring matches. I think I might try it on the Atheist Experience Facebook plug, or the Atheist Experience Discord double plug.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, I think just I'm going to have to put the work in to understand first, then first understand, then seek to be understood. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we've made some good headway, and I hope that you are successful in your conversations with the people. My last word of caution would be um, to enter with the objective of understanding, because people can tell when you're using them as a project. So try to treat
Yeah.
them as a person, and I have confidence that you are going in with good intentions, and that
Oh,
that
absolutely.
you will engage honestly. But I do want to just throw that out there for everybody in the
Oh
audience who
no.
might be thinking about practicing this.
Yeah. It's more, yeah, and I always try and make it positive. And the last one I had, and I'm not even just saying religion. A guy just, we talked about, do you believe in love? And we basically ended up having a really nice little conversation about the confluence between emotion and physiology, and what love is and where it comes from. And we just had the warm fuzzies afterwards. So it doesn't have to be confrontational. It can be very nice.
Yes,
Awesome.
I appreciate that. And also another thing before you go, and that's not limited to religion, but when we argue for or against anything, it is very important to know why we're arguing for or against, um, instead of falling into the white savior syndrome. And
Yeah.
are we arguing to save these people from their own culture, or are we arguing because we can see that it is affecting our culture and causing harm to humanity at large? We have to be very aware and conscious of why we argue for or against anything.
Mm. Certainly. Absolutely.
Yeah. I hope all of that helped, and thank you for your call.
Right up. Have a good day, Jade.
Yeah. Have a good rest of your day.